Hello.
I am so interested to find out all about who Jeff Boothe is and in regards to him being a part of the Metropolitan Police. So tell me a little bit about your early days and why the police force?
When you say early days in policing or just
yes, early days in
policing?
Just before you got into policing, what inspired you to join the police force?
If I think back to when I was in school, my ambition was to be a professional basketball player, and my focus was on getting a scholarship, going to America, because that was
the place.
That was the Mecca. So I was playing for England boys in Germany. There was an all-nations tournament. I was one of the top players, got offered a scholarship. Went to America, stayed there for a number of years, and then didn't grow. The economics of, do you want to pay a scholarship for a 6-foot-odd English person or free of charge American 6'9", there's no comparison. So I came back, tail between my legs, kind of like thinking, what am I now going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And was working out with some old basketball friends, still lived over here, and they mentioned the British Transport Police. Never heard of it, never heard of British Transport Police. And they then said, you do realise it's the hardest police service to get into, knowing that would appeal to my sense of competition. Anytime somebody tells you I can't do something, it's like, yeah, okay, let's see, let's prove a point. And I looked at their brochure, and it was on the front was a black superintendent whose name is Guy Williamson, who, if you're not aware, he was in the British Transport Police, and then he left and became a barrister, so he's a Old Bailey barrister. But I never wanted to join the Met Police because of some issues that my family had with the Met. So in my mind, it was like, I'll join policing, but I'm not joining the Met. So when I told my folks that I made my decision, my dad's reaction was, well, unless you rise through the ranks, what's the point in you just joining to become a PC? And my mum was like, well, if you want to do it, why you wanted to do it? So I said, well, one thing appealed my sense of competition. Two, I wanted to be able to do different jobs within the same job, because I get bored very quickly. I want to do different challenges. Mm-hmm. But in essence, my true way of wanting to do it was I wanted to give back to people, because I can do something that helps me, but if I'm helping someone else at the same time, then I'm happy. So that's why I did it. Why
is the transport police hardest to get into?
At the time, if you consider, say, the Met Police, now we've got around about 33,500 officers.
Okay.
When I joined the British Transport Police, they had around about 3,500 officers.
Wow.
Nationwide, because it's a national force. So the competition is really, really, really high. And that's what appealed to me. So I applied, got in.
Was you surprised to get in, or the competition? You just
I had the arrogance of youth, but it was like I'm going to prove it to them. So I got in, and then on the intake, there were two black officers, me and another
mm-hmm.
black person in the whole of the training school.
Oh wow!
So interesting enough, I think it was the week before, there was an article in the Sun newspaper where there was a black officer that had been woken up at the training school. They thought it was a joke. To wake him up, they had white sheets over their head, took him out naked, tied him to a tree and left him there, and thought it was a joke. And it obviously hit the national news. So when I saw that, my brother was like, "What are you doing during this? What the hell are you doing?" So I was like, okay. So then when we went down to the training school, the guy that I joined, Jerry Brown, he's about 6'8", very skinny, but 6'8", so he walks in. And in those days, I had just pretty much finished playing basketball, so I was about 16.5 stone, about 9% body fat, chiseled. And we walked in, and we just pretty much said, if anybody wants to knock on our door in the middle of the night, we'll take as many of you as possible. Which is not the thing to say, but again, we still weren't used to police culture, but we were trying to make a statement. And that was it. So.
And how was your first couple of weeks there?
It was an eye-opener. It was like going back into the dark ages. I was born and raised within Brixton, so I've always been surrounded by my own kind, my own food culture. Then when I went over to America, when I was not at school, I'd either been to Brooklyn or the Bronx, because that's where family were. You never didn't see a white person for time. So to go into an organisation that was exclusively white and having the usual comments about what's that you're eating and all that kind of stuff, it was like, okay, it's going to take a little bit of getting used to, but it was all right, we got there.
You didn't think like, what have I done?
No, because I knew why I wanted to join. I wanted to be giving back, so it was like I knew it was time bound, so I knew I was only going to be there to get through the training school, and then I'd be out on the streets, so that was fine for me. There was a light at the end of the tunnel.
So your family were quite supportive, were your mum and dad?
Well, my parents were very much, they were, we'll put it this way, traditional Jamaican family. You're always respectful to your parents, but my parents were respectful for me, maybe because I'd gone off to America and cut the ties, so it was like you come back, it's pretty much, well, you're going to make your own decisions, so just don't embarrass the family, but just do what you need to do, and that was it.
And what, from a community point of view, did you feel that you might be judged because of your decision?
No, because for me, I had true friends, so a true friend is going to support you regardless. Yeah, there was the odd kissing of the teeth kind of stuff, but you'd say to him, listen, I'm doing it, and it's like, okay, fine. But of course I could understand why. I think it made it a bit easier because I was saying to them, it's not the Met, it's BTP. Okay. So it's like, okay, all right then. Maybe if I joined direct into Met, that might have been different.
A different conversation. And then where did you go from there?
Well, I was in British Transport Police for 24 years.
Oh wow, a long time.
Got to the rank of superintendent. I was the first, this is how sad it is. You're talking 2015 when I left, so I've been in the Met 7 years. But when I left, I was the first black superintendent in the history of the organisation. You're talking, that's 2015. It's like, come on now, what's going on?
Yeah.
But I joined the Met on promotion to Chief Super, and yeah, it's been interesting.
So your reservations about joining the Met back then, and then ultimately you are now with the Met, what was your change in thought process, or is it that you'd been in the British Transport Police, so hey, there's not that much difference, or?
No, I think it's more about, let's put it this way, very few people even now know that the British Transport Police exist.
Yeah, you educated me today.
Yeah.
That I thought it was all the same.
Yeah. So if I want to make a real impact, which is what I want to do, then you've got to be in the largest force, because you can pour all the efforts in, but if it's not going to amplify. So that's why I joined, because the Met does have issues. But the only way you're going to change it is by actually being part of it. I could easily be on the outside and point the finger, as a lot of people like to do, but that's not helping us collectively. So I thought, okay, I'll roll my sleeves up and I'll try and do my little bit.
So now that you're in the Met Police, what do you say, been here 7 years?
Yeah, 2015 I joined, so yeah, seven years.
Do you have some kissing now that you've joined the Met? You know, do you have the community supporting you, would you say?
On the whole, no, to be fair, the way that I judge it is that I don't have anybody that walks away. What I do have is people that will want to have a conversation, and that for me is the start. So if somebody walks away, you're not even engaging.
Exactly.
But I can have a conversation and people say to me, I will never join the Met. And I say, that's fine. And then I will say, oh, so why is that? And they'll start to relay their stuff, and then when you can share similar experiences, and then when you share experiences that if you go into custody, so like as part of a superintendent's role, there are times where you've got to go in to review someone who's been arrested and detained. So after X amount of hours, you've got to make sure that they've been lawfully detained, that the investigation is being dealt with diligently and expeditiously as part of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. When you go in there and you're independent of the investigation, and there is somebody from a minority background, predominantly black, and they see you in a uniform, they see that you're in charge, you can see the relief on their face, the difference you can make. So if you can make that difference when they're not in those difficult positions, but you've given a difference in terms of helping them progress, it's a different perspective. And that's why we need to have more diversity, more representation. You go to our training schools, predominantly white. You go into media department, predominantly white. HR at the senior levels, predominantly white. We need to have that diversity, because how can we be providing a true service to the people of London if we don't understand? And one of the ways of understanding, if you've got people from that community. So that's why for me it's important.
What do you think, because I'm not from London originally, so predominantly white is what I know, but now moving to London, and there is diversity, and it's not representative of the country. Why do you feel the Met still have the issues it has in regards to particularly the black community having issues, that there isn't a good enough, I would say, representation of diversity? And for me, it's not just diversity, it's diversity of thought. You know, why do you think we are still in 2022 having these issues?
I think it needs enlightened leadership to understand the true benefit, as you said, of true diversity. Human nature, we are all the same.
Yeah.
In the respect of, if we are comfortable, there are very few people, if they're comfortable, who will turn around and say, I need to make myself uncomfortable in order to improve. The majority of people, if they're comfortable, they'll stick with the status quo. So my personal view is that the Met have been comfortable with the status quo. They will take and have taken the odd criticism, but if there isn't a pressing need to change, you're going to look to maintain the status quo. You're going to make the odd effort to bring in a few, but where is the pressing need to recognise that you have to have a groundswell of diversity across all departments, diversity of thought? Because if I'm sitting in a meeting, and the way that I try to explain it, if I'm dealing with violence against women and girls, and if I'm holding a planning meeting, and if I look around that room and it's all men, surely my radar should say, I haven't got the right people in the room. But for all too long within the Met, we've been comfortable in having predominantly white males in the room, and we're talking about race. And someone should have been saying, hold on, this isn't right. We need to improve that diversity. And if you don't have chief officers at that level, then bring in your chief supers or your supers in the room because of the added value that you can bring. So until we truly recognise the importance of having a diverse workforce because of the different thoughts, understanding, then we're not going to make that real step change that we need to make. We are making some good headway. We're doing some really, really good stuff, but we've got to be, what's the right word? For me, we've got to continue to be unsatisfied, because it's very easy for people to say, oh, we've got an outreach team.
I'm comfortable.
We've got to keep pushing ourselves. But then we, as people from minority backgrounds, as we see the numbers coming in, we can't be comfortable. We've got one black female commander. We've got one black male commander. We should not be comfortable with that. We should be saying we need more. You know? But unless you are constantly hungry and looking to improve stuff, there's a danger that we can become complacent and say, yeah, we're making changes, but that's not enough.
Well, what about people who say, God, that word diversity again? You know, why is it always about race? What would be your answer to them?
Well, move the word diversity to one side and say, we're a service, we're supposed to provide a service to all people within London. In order to provide the best service, we should look like and we should think like the very people that we are looking to represent. What label you want to put on it is down to you, but that is what we should be doing. So if you don't like the word diversity, put it to one side. Let's look at it from a practical point of view. That's what we should be doing.
And then do you feel under pressure as I personally hate the word minority, but as a black man, do you feel under pressure to deliver more so than if you were a white male that was given the task of trying to get more diversity within the Metropolitan Police?
Well, first of all, it's not my responsibility. So you've got a Mayor of London that set out an action plan. The Met have got a strategic direction which they've said. So it should be everyone's collective commitment. From a personal perspective, the only pressure that I feel is the pressure that I put on myself to do the best that I can do on a daily basis. I took this job because I chose it. If they'd have come to me and asked me to do it, then I probably wouldn't have done it. But I chose it because I wanted to do it. I wanted to be able to try and put stuff in place I felt that I could do. I know I've only got a certain shelf life before I burn out and all of the other stuff. But I knew people like Sean, Abdul Rob, networks of people that I thought if I could tap into them, just imagine what we could do.
Mm.
And if we could put the foundations in place, and if we could do it with other departments so they feel comfortable doing stuff, that they then realise, this isn't so difficult. You know what? They're not going to bite if we work with them. When they see success, it's like, oh yeah, we could do a lot more. So if we can start to get to that stage, then I think we're really going to get there. But my biggest concern is the legacy as to, because I'm not the first one that's done this. There's others that have come and gone, and things have died off. I remember I joined in 1991. The same conversations that we're having now was happening in 1991. There were Home Office targets that, as we're getting closer and closer to those targets, and I'm thinking, I'm going to see what's going to happen. It's like, is there going to be this step change? And all of a sudden, they start talking about the Home Office targets. They got forgotten about. They got swept under. A few years go by, another report comes out, or something critical happens. Another report. This is what we need to do. And those of that have been around long enough, it is like Groundhog Day. You just change the name of the report, but pretty much the same recommendations. Mm-hmm. And I always jokingly say to people, you can normally tell when a senior officer is about to retire, because that's when they become enlightened and they see the importance of diversity. It'd be nice if they had that when they started and be able to drive it whilst they're in power. So those are the home truths.
What is it like being a black police officer? Like, joining is one thing, then there's retention, which is another thing. We can say you've been retained for a little bit, quite a long time within the police in some form. Why do you stay? Because when I have read books of people who've left, you get to have a little insight of what it's like to be a black police officer in the Met in particular. It doesn't warm me to join. So I think it's great that you want to do this work, but for you, for your own mental health, your welfare, how is it on a day-to-day basis? Because, and I can only go by what I read and what I hear. It just seems tough for being a black person in the metropolitan. I've got to say how I see it.
There's many layers to it. I think the thing that keeps me going is I've got a 5-year-old daughter. So if I can make a difference so that as she grows up, she doesn't have to go through some of the foolishness that I've had to go through. Mm-hmm. Then great. Some of it is just due to my nature. The more difficult they try and make it, the harder I'll work. If they wanted to get rid of me, they should just give me everything that I'm asking for, and that's it. But no, joking aside, someone asked me this question before. I want to be able to leave a legacy, put things in place that I can look back and say, yeah. Because I'd love to see a black commissioner. I'd love to see a black commissioner with a diverse management team. I'd love to see an organisation that was truly working with the black community, not just engagement, but in business, offering jobs and all the other stuff, which is stuff that we're working with. That's truly embedded in the community. If I left, I'd just be looking in. So I'm staying. But all joking aside, I can't speak for others. All I can speak from my my experience, it does take a toll. One of the ways I expressed it to people is I don't smoke, but I can go into a room full of smokers and I can come out and my clothes are smelling of smoke. So it's had an impact. It's like the same when you go into
Oh, I love that analogy.
It has an impact.
Yeah.
So I've been fortunate enough to speak to people who have said, have you checked on your mental well-being? And I'm not ashamed to say I've sat down with counsellors. How do I deal with this? How do I get up each morning and go back in there? So you get these coping mechanisms. So when you see others going, you can identify, you can go over to them and just give them you're doing a great job. One of the difficult things is, you know the expression, not all skin folk are kinfolk?
Mm-hmm.
That is one of the most challenging things, is that we're not all together. But, so like one of the reasons I enjoy talking to Sean Pascal, by the way, who works within the Met, is that whenever we choose to argue against ourselves, if we focus on the ultimate goal, which is being more representative, being able to be our true selves within the workforce, then we should be able to put all of those petty differences to one side, because that's what we're all collectively working towards. But it does take time. Have I always felt that way? No. But I've got 31 years in now, so I think I've come out the other side.
And are you your true self at work?
I am my true self at work. This is me inside and outside of work. Well, I only pay attention to people whose opinion I value. I haven't got time for foolishness. I know my worth. I know what I can do. I don't have to spend the time justifying myself to people who just are too ignorant to understand it. Simple as that.
Yeah. And being in the position you are, there aren't many people that look or sound like you. I imagine it's can be a very lonely place at times. Who do you look to for support, and
Yeah, so good question. On the first, the importance of family cannot be underestimated. True friends are really important, but what is equally important is professional networks of being able to speak to. They don't even have to be within policing, but it's talking to professionals who are from a similar background, who understand what it's like to have been the first or the few to break into whatever field it is, because you can have those kind of conversations. What is it like when everyone's watching you, or can you demonstrate that you're competent to do the job? Are you only here because of your ethnicity? So it's good to have those conversations, and I'm also fortunate because there's the National Organisation of Black Legal Executives, Noble, in America, and I went out there 4 years ago, and black police chiefs everywhere, just getting business cards like crazy. So like now, regular contact, I'm dealing with this, how did you do it? Yeah, Chicago we did this, New York we did this, LA we did this. And then when you bring them together on like MS Teams calls, and you say to chief officers within the organisation, oh, we're looking at the issue of knife crime, or we're looking at the issue of recruitment, I've got a few people that have got experience, and they come in, and then it's chief this, chief that, and you can say, how did you know these people? But the point is, you can then share what is it like, and they can tell you the stories, and then you don't feel like you're the only one that's travelled that path. And then they can then tell you, watch out when this happens. So when when some of the stuff that they might want to try here, if you're already alive to it, you can dodge that little bullet or whatever, or can see that one coming. But if you're trying to do it by yourself, too much. So, hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does, thank you.
Yeah, no one's an island, trust me.
Yeah. But it's where do we take the time to share that experience with others? And I'm not being elitist in any sense of the word, but I know what it's like to be a PC, a sergeant, inspector, chief inspector, superintendent, because I've gone through the ranks. But I can't explain it to a PC who's not been in that position.
It's not elitist, it's just they haven't shared
They haven't experienced it. So you need to speak to somebody. The moment you start talking about it, yeah, I know who you are, because I've been there. But then it's important for us then to help the others to come up and make sure that they don't make the same mistakes or whatever.
So if I was to ask you 3 of your legacy that you want to, 3 issues or 3 things that are really important to you that you would want to, when you decide to retire, what would they be?
15th of September 2026, not that I'm counting. So what are the 3 things that I would look for? One, a couple of things I'm working on at the moment, as a matter of fact. So I'm looking at setting up a charitable arm of the Met Police Service. The reason why I'm looking to do that is for us to employ initially one fundraiser, but a series of fundraisers to go to the corporate world and to be able to siphon off some of the millions that they have under the heading of corporate social responsibility. We get that money, comes to the Met charity, and we can then fund minority-owned businesses and organisations that want to help us in terms of improving. At the moment, I'm focusing on recruitment, but you could do so many things in youth development. But the problem is, we work year on year getting funding from MOPAC. They'll give us a fund, but it's only for a certain period of time. So if we can really get some long-term sustainable funding, and then we build up programs to coach and mentor small businesses, and people say, why do we need to do that? Because if you're giving people the skills that they can direct their entrepreneurial skills that they're using at the moment in terms of crime, but into business, then you're giving them a pathway. So if we can go down that road, we're then not just seen as a crime fighting agency. We are actually, which we've signed up to be, which is an anchor organisation, which is a bedrock within the community. But we're doing practical things to give them the opportunity. That's one of the key legacies that I'd like to put in place. The other one for me is, if we could get all departments within the Met to recognise the importance of community engagement groups or community reference groups, so that when you come into New Scotland Yard, it would not be unusual to see members of the community walking around on different floors and all. Yes, there's certain bits around security, not getting that wrong, but this building should not be put up on that only certain people can come. This is the public's building.
It should be us and you kind of scenario, because that's how it does feel.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
My God.
Yeah, exactly. And as you go up the floors, it gets whiter and whiter, and it's like, I jokingly say, I mean, you come onto this floor, because more often than not these rooms are the emptiest. When I have meetings with members of the community, once it's more than one black person, you can see them looking. That's how far we've got to go, you know? So those are the two key things for me. Then I know that we've got somewhere. So I've got 3.5 years to try and get there.
And let's talk a little bit about you personally. So you used to love or used to play, I don't know if you still do basketball?
I still love it from afar. My knees do not allow me to go anywhere near the court, but I still do a bit of coaching. I coach some youngsters in Thornton Heath, where I'm from. So yeah, I love the game.
Because Brixton, or for me, Brixton was rough and ready. And that's where I used to love the basketball.
Whereabouts?
It used to be in the recreation. You know, they used to have the big night. Everybody used to go and play ball. And then you had Matthew Ryder.
So Jimmy,
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, Brixton became my place because it had basketball.
Yeah, well, we before then, I used to play down Flaxman, which is just down by Loughborough. That's where the real frontline type stuff. If you used to come out there still with your trainers and all your teeth, then you were fine. But it was like the school of hard knocks, and if you could do it there,
you could do it anywhere.
Exactly. So yeah, a lot of the guys we used to play with, and my brother still lives in Brixton. That's where we were born and raised, just off Acre Lane, before we upgraded and moved to Norbury. And then I went off. But yeah, still go back to Brixton, still see friends and family and stuff like that.
And what do you think in Brixton, do you think the view of the Met has changed from when you initially was living there?
Well, it was very, very much them and us when I was growing up. I remember getting stopped and searched when I was 9. I was with my cousin, we were going to play table tennis. Cold winter's day, I had my batting pocket and got pulled over, got searched and everything. Went home, told my mum, first question, what did you do wrong? Told her, right, put your coat back on. Went down to the police station, demanded to know why we'd been stopped. But there was very much a them and us, and then obviously stuff that happened with Brixton riots and everything else really, really changed the dynamic. When I go down to Brixton now and I read the local, I'm not sure if it's called the Bugle or whatever, and I read it, and there's nothing in there from the police about what they're doing proactively.
And positively.
Exactly.
Those positives. Yeah.
Exactly, but they're not proactively in there showcasing what they're doing. The only time they're in there is when there's been an incident and the commander's going along to account for why an incident happened and 73 vehicles turned up, that type of stuff. So there's for me, and I know how difficult it is because I've been Borough Commander of Croydon, I've been the BCU Commander of Croydon, Bromley and so on. I know how difficult it is, but unless we are out there working with the people, one that can help us, but those that are anti, because you got to have the conversations. They respect you if you have the conversation. You can respect to disagree, but if you're not out there, people ain't going to care.
So on a lighter note, tell me what's your favourite meal? What's your favourite dish?
Well, it used to be up until...
No,
it used to be up until 5 years ago, ackee and saltfish and hard food, but I don't eat fish anymore. So was a pescatarian since 1984, and then 5 years ago I stopped eating fish. So
probably the opposite way round. I was a vegetarian from 5, and then in the last 3 years I have fish. But that's due to health. I've got to have something more. But yeah, I was the opposite.
Yeah. So no, I mean, for me, I still like, I've got to be worried about the starch, but I still like the hard foods. I'll have the ackee, I'll have some callaloo. So yeah, I find my way around it, for just cut out the fish.
Favourite colour?
Purple.
And what, I love a purple. What are you listening to? What's your playlist at the moment? Tell me what's your go-to track at the moment.
Well, I'm old school, so I love Prince.
Oh.
So anything to do with Prince just hits the mark for me. I like Nina Simone. In fact, I was just listening to some Prince this morning. It's an old song it's called "The New Power Generation." We want to change the world. The only thing that's in our way is you. Your old-fashioned music, your old ideals. We're sick and tired of you telling us what to do. Pardon us for breathing, can we borrow some of your air? The problem with you and your kind is you don't know love is there. And that for me epitomises the challenge that we face.
Definitely. My sister is a die-hard Prince fan, but his words, his writing ability was out of this world. Really was. And what are you watching? What your Netflix? Do you have time to watch TV or?
I don't have a TV.
You don't have a TV?
No. You are what you consume.
Ooh.
And people don't realise what they're being brainwashed on television. So I'm purposely stay away from television. I, on occasions, will go on YouTube and I'll look at BET. What's the guy's name? Tavis or Tavis? Oh, I can't remember. It's Tavis Smiley.
Okay. Yes.
So I would say that I'm re-educating myself from what I was taught in school. I'm on a journey to re-educate myself about black culture, black history, so I've got a better understanding of what true history is, not what we were force-fed. So I actively do that. In terms of, I love Dave Chappelle. In terms
he was here recently.
So I love his ability of saying it as it is, but in a velvet glove, and you get people up. So so that's a source of entertainment for me.
And if you could pick one place in the world that you would like to visit that you haven't visited, where would that be?
Good question. Probably, well, I'll tell you what, I'll be able to answer that in a few weeks' time, because I've just did one of those ancestry DNA things.
Okay.
So when I get the results back and it tells me, hopefully, what part of Africa I've come from, then I'll probably look to go out there.
I've done mine,
And
so
see.
I know exactly
Yeah.
where mine was, which was interesting.
Yeah.
It's really interesting when you find out the
Yeah.
different mixes. Well, I am quite mixed, but yeah, it was very
Mm.
interesting. You're like, how did you get in there? Okay. But it's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you.
It's always good to get to know the person behind the uniform or behind the title. But my ending question would be, if you had to take one thing, you can take one thing with you on an island, what would that be? One thing, not two, because every time people say, oh, but can I take, no, one thing, what would it be and why?
Well, it's probably not the right way to describe it, but the one thing would be my daughter.
Oh, well, I think I know why. I think I know why.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Keep trying to do what I'm doing in partnership with people like yourselves, Sean and others, because that's the only way you can get it done.
Yeah, it sure is. As my mum used to say, no one is an island.
Absolutely.
And it's truly, they say your network is your net worth. It's true. It's who we, like you talked about.
Yeah.
It can just be very impactful. Thank you.
No, thank you.
What you mean, Tony?